Welcome to the Financial Freedom Secrets Show. This is your host, Jackson Milan, the Wealth Mentor, helping business owners create financial freedom faster by mastering the language of money. Want to see how well you're tracking towards financial freedom? Complete our 40-point financial performance scorecard at wealthhealthcheck.com.au. That's wealthhealthcheck.com.au. The average score for most business owners is 18 out of 40. So complete the scorecard now and see how well you're tracking towards financial freedom. G'day guys, it's Jackson Milan, the Wealth Mentor, and we're here for another episode of Financial Freedom Secrets Show. And I've got a guest here today, Giovanni from Live and Dare. Giovanni is an expert in self-discipline, of developing follow-through, of actually being able to achieve more in life, in business, and wealth by understanding some of these self-limiting beliefs and invisible ceilings that many of us have and many people fail to push through. And I've been spending quite a lot of time recently working on this inner game because we've spoken a lot about tactics and strategies, but you can have all of the strategies and tactics in the world, but unless you're lifting those invisible ceilings and working on yourself and your internal operating system, then you're always going to have that frustration of not getting everything that you want. So very excited for this conversation today. Giovanni, thanks for joining us. How you doing, mate?
I'm doing well. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So, mate, those who don't know you, do you want to give us a little bit of your backstory and what got you to where you are right now, mate?
Okay. So I've always been involved with meditation practice since I'm about 14 years old. It was always a big part of my life. And also reading about philosophy and mindset, psychology, personal development. You know, I've devoured many books over the past 2.5 decades. And initially, I have a background in law. I worked with the government of Brazil in law for about 5 years. Then I migrated to Australia, where I shifted careers to IT. That's what got me the citizenship eventually. I worked as an app developer for about 5 years. And then I embraced my passion of being a writer, a teacher, and a coach. And since then, I have been doing this full time. So helping people with meditation, personal growth, and self-discipline.
Amazing, mate. So you speak to most successful people in the world, and they can all attribute a lot of their success to some sort of meditative practice. But when I speak to a lot of individuals, particularly entrepreneurs, our minds are racing. We're going 1,000 miles a minute. I know I've certainly had challenges with trying to master the art of meditation. Is there a secret to doing it, and why is it so impactful for so many people?
Right. Well, your mind is your number one tool in life. Whatever goal you want to achieve in any area of your life, it's going to be your mind that is going to help you stay focused, that is going to help you think about things the right way, that is going to help you, cultivate the right mindset and overcome any negative emotions or impulses that may be holding you back. And so the training of the mind is essential for you to achieve any goal in your life and also for well-being, right? So a happy mind is a more effective mind. A very disturbed mind, a mind that is full of negative emotions and distractions, it's not going to be very effective in business or in any area of life for that matter. And so the learning how to train the mind, how to cultivate awareness and willpower, this is a core skill for happiness and well-being.
Makes a lot of sense, mate. And I think it's frustrating when you start, right? Because you hear all these great things about meditation, but you try and create maybe a quiet space, you try and clear your mind, and then there's a distraction and you go down some mental rabbit hole and you're like, oh, I've lost my concentration. So have you got some quick tips for maybe somebody who's really struggling getting started? They're frustrated with those constant fleeting thoughts to actually channel that energy, keep that focus and get the most out of their early days of meditation.
Yes. So that is the nature of the mind. In the meditation books, we call the mind like a drunken monkey that is jumping from branch to branch. And that's its nature. So it takes a lot of training for us to be able to hold our attention on a single object without distractions. And in the beginning, if you're focused on that, it's going to be a very frustrating experience. And you may feel like, you know what, this is not for me. Instead, what you should be focusing on is just observing the mind. Try to become as attentive and as aware of the movements of your mind as possible. So if you become distracted, you know that you became distracted. If you're trying to focus on your breath and 10 thoughts down the line, you realize that you forgot about everything about the breath and what you're doing, and you're thinking about lunch or about that product launch or whatever it is. Then you become aware that you got distracted, and you exercise your willpower to bring your attention back to the meditation object. And over time, maybe you start realizing that you got distracted. Instead of 10 thoughts down the line, you realize it thoughts down the line, or five. And so little by little, your awareness becomes sharper and faster, if we can say so. And your ability to maintain your attention on a single object, that will increase. And that also means that when you need to stay focused in your work, when you need to say no to distractions, that's also going to be much easier, because you're training that every morning when you sit to meditate.
Beautiful. And it makes so much sense, right? Like, nobody can measure themselves on that perfection of getting to the ultimate goal when they're just getting started. So that idea of progress over perfection makes so much sense. And it's so common in other things, yet we get so frustrated when it comes to mindset work. Now, how much time should people allocate to practice this each day? You mentioned each morning. How much time
Yeah.
should we set aside?
Well, for the sake of habit building, you can start with 5 minutes a day, just so that it's easy and you have no excuse to skip. And then try to increase 1 minute a week until you get to 20 minutes. And for most purposes of, well-being and focus and productivity, 20 minutes a day of meditation, that's a really good practice.
Beautiful. Great. I think that's a phenomenal start. And I think, once again, for us as entrepreneurs, we tend to be ambitious. And I hear people saying, I want to be able to meditate for an hour or 2 hours or whatever it might be. And like, hey, look, that could take years, potentially decades, to develop that skill. So let's set the bar pretty low. Now, mate, I want to circle back to a point that you made around willpower. Now, do you
Mhm.
believe that willpower is a muscle? Is it something that you train, or are you born with it? Do you either have it or do you don't?
It's both. I mean, our genetics, our personality, our nature and nurture, all of this influences the amount of willpower that we have. Our lifestyle tremendously influences the amount of willpower that we have. But whatever comes to us for free in terms of willpower, we can always take it to the next level by training it, right? So it's a little bit like the skill of focus. Some people can focus better than others. If you struggle with ADHD, you're probably in the very low spectrum of how much you can focus. But however much you can focus, there is a training that can take you to the next level.
Makes sense. And the reason why I ask, mate, is that so many entrepreneurs that I work with and that I speak to get very frustrated that they've got so many of these big ideas for their life, their business, their wealth, and they lack the follow through. They lack that discipline and that willpower to do the work that they know is necessary. But it's like there's some invisible wall that's stopping them, that's holding them back from being able to follow through with those things. So, somebody in that position, how do they work through that? How do they create that self-discipline and train their willpower to work through it?
Yes. So in the framework of mindful self-discipline, we talk about three pillars: aspiration, awareness, and action. And aspiration means to have clarity about who you want to be. What life do you want to live? What are your core values? Where do you want to be a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, in a way that is going to be fulfilling? And when you have that clarity, then you can use that as the compass for every decision. And that's very powerful, because you can reflect, like, is the way that I'm living my life right now aligned with my values and with my goals? Meaning, if I continue like this for the next 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, 3 decades, am I going to get there? Or is this not aligned? And so that powerful awareness is the first thing that you need. That, you know what, I'm probably not going to get there by pursuing 7 business ideas at the same time. No, I'll have to choose one or two, go deep in it, and stay with it even when things are not working. And that requires that we give up the fantasy for overnight success, and that we have the maturity, the responsibility, the awareness to know that, you know what, I can use all the shortcuts in the world, but it's still a process, it's still a path, and it's going to take time. And if I'm unwilling to accept that, then I'm always going to be looking out for the next shiny object. And how long is it going to take me to realize that that's not going to take me anywhere, right? So it's that awareness.
Makes a lot of sense. And I think this is the issue, right? People are so distracted. they're driven by these superficial motivations. And I think when you've got a deep connection to what it is that you want, and you can remove those distractions and focus your energy and attention in a particular place, magic can happen. And I know from my own first-hand experience, I used to have a lot of issue with procrastination and lacking follow through. But then I started small, and I said, okay, well, what's the minimum viable expectation that I could set for myself that I could prove I could follow through? And much like going to the gym, you start small. You start with, say, lifting the bar, and then you add weight over time. And I think self-discipline is very much the same. And I think
Right.
that's something that we can build on over time. And of course, we're impatient. We want everything yesterday. We don't want to have to wait for it. So we need to develop that patience as well.
Yes. And self-discipline is about creating empowering structures in your life.
Mm.
Structures that allow you to work as your best and to continue, to fight today so you can fight tomorrow, not to fight today in a way that soon you get to burnout. That's not sustainable. So, one of these disciplines is the morning routine. If you have a morning routine that you are ticking all the important boxes in your day when it comes to health, focus, and maybe the most important activity in your business or in your career, if you do that every morning before breakfast, before you go online, you start the day with the best foot forward. That's just one example of a discipline, a structure that can allow you to show up as your best.
Beautiful. So, what's some examples of some things that people could consider putting in their morning routine to create that structure and be their best?
Right. So I always think about three things. Whoever I work with, these three things must be there in the morning routine. One of them is meditation, where you're training those muscles of awareness and willpower. The second one is the offline morning, that you wake up with your phone in airplane mode because you went to bed with your phone in airplane mode. You don't wake up with your phone and stay half an hour on bed scrolling through Instagram, the news, or whatever it is, right? You start your day with a clean slate, and you keep that slate clean until you have ticked the most important boxes in your life. So that's the second element. And the third element, I would say day planning, that you spend 5 to 10 minutes looking at your calendar, looking at your to-do list, and planning your day. What are the most important things that you want to do today? What do you need to do to make sure that you protect the time you need, the energy you need for those activities? Because most people know how to prioritize, how to choose their priorities, but how do you protect your priorities
Mm.
from other people taking over with requests, from yourself messing it up by, getting distracted? So all of that is part of a day plan. So if you start your day with, more or less always at the same time, and that is great for your health, for your circadian rhythm, you do some meditation practice, you plan your day, and all this time you're offline. And then another thing you can add is the most important activity that will move your most important goal forward. For
Beautiful.
some people, it might be to call 3 prospects. For another person, it might be to stay 30 minutes in the treadmill. Whatever is that most important activity that you want to do every day, no matter what, include that in the morning routine before breakfast, before you go online. And that's how you start a great day.
Makes sense. And I think it makes so much sense. Setting yourself up the right way. I know for myself, that was one of the first things that I implemented that became a catalyst for my own self discipline, is being really strict with my morning routine and what I allow to come into that morning routine and how I go through the motions of that morning routine. For me, obviously, we've got our animal sanctuary. So I spend time going out, taking care of the animals. I'm out with nature. I'm enjoying our beautiful property. That's a kind of a meditation for me as well. I'd probably say it's more like a channeled or a kind of a transcendental meditation because it's focused on a particular thing. But it sets me up for success, right? And it fills the cup and it gives you the energy that you need to then push through the day. But for so many people who maybe don't have the kind of environment that like I do, right? Because I've got very little distraction. I'm out in the middle of the nowhere. People who live in suburbia, they've got young families, they've got endless distractions, maybe team reaching out to them. How do you establish boundaries to ensure that people respect that space you've created in that morning routine so you can do it for long enough to turn it into a long-term habit?
Yeah. It helps to wake up before everybody else. And that's
Mm.
what I do. That makes things really easy. But it's, you need to communicate with people in your household that from this time to this time, I am awake, you're going to hear me, but I'm unavailable.
Mm.
And anything else, anything that you need, I'll start working on it after this time. And when it comes to working with a team, it's helpful to have a time of the day that is dedicated to deep work, and you would actually book this time on your calendar so that no one can book anything at that time. And so people know, and so that you have a reminder that, oh, from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., that's when I do deep work. I'm not checking emails. I'm not checking Slack. I'm not taking phone calls. I am, planning my next business move or writing that report or creating that product. That
Yeah.
type of work, that unless you have uninterrupted time for it, you're not going to do that work, or you're not going to do it well.
Yeah, and I see people trying to do that at the end of the day or on the weekend or whatnot, and you're just so exhausted. You're never going to do it well. And this is the needle moving stuff. And this all makes so much common sense. Um, why do you think it's so hard for people to do this? Because this isn't the majority of people, Giovanni. I'm sure the vast
Mhm.
majority of people that you work with, I'm sure they also believe this is common sense, but they probably don't come to you doing this stuff. Why do you think
Right.
that is, mate?
I think part of it is they're not fully aware of the problem. They are
Mm,
they are living more outside in, they're living in a more reactive way. They're not stopping and thinking and realizing, what, if it continues like this, I'm not going to write my book. I'm not going to launch that product. I'm not going to be getting a new client every day unless I am really serious and I create certain rules around my time, around my schedule, around my focus. Until I do that, it's not going to happen. They don't have that awareness. Or maybe they have an inkling of that awareness. And then they come to me and I tell them what they already know, but I tell them with the conviction, with the experience, with the expertise. And they're like, oh, okay, now I see it. Okay, let's do this. And so part of it is the lack of awareness. And the other part is the lack of willpower. And willpower is something that you train, that they have tried implementing that, but in a very haphazard way. They do it for a few days, they stop, and then they start telling themselves that it's not going to work. um, they don't know the tools, they don't know maybe how to navigate the mindsets, they don't know that it's going to require a few false starts before you actually continue. They don't know that for building a habit you need a cue, right? So often people come to me and say, oh, I want to do this every day, but I'm not doing it. Well, what happens? I forget. Well, do you have a reminder for it? Oh, no. Right? You need a cue. If you want to build a habit, you need a cue. Or if they tell me, like, no, I have a reminder, but then I don't do it. Okay. So the problem is not that you're forgetting. The problem is your environment is reminding you to do it. Maybe it's a calendar, maybe it's an alarm. And at that moment, tell me what happens. Because in that moment, you're making a decision to not do the habit that is important for you. And then we dive into that and we see, is it procrastination? Is it distraction? Is it doubt? Is it fear? What is it? And then depending on the challenge that they are struggling with, we're going to try different solutions to unfold that, to unravel that.
makes so much sense. That's great, mate. I think the other part to this, right, is that people are just mentally and physically exhausted, particularly entrepreneurs. And I think this is fueled by the fact that us entrepreneurs do struggle to switch off. I don't know how I've done this, but I've always created a space for me to do work. And then as soon as I exit that space, I can encapsulate that, I can switch off, and then I don't think about it again. But for the vast
Mhm.
majority of people, they're thinking about their business 24/7, 365, and that takes a significant mental toll. So we recognize that it's important for people to be able to switch off and be present in whatever it is that they're doing fully. How do people start doing that, mate?
Mm. Yeah, we are consuming so much information. That's part of the problem. We are all the time connected and we're all the time consuming information. And if you're all the time consuming information, you're not keeping any time to reflecting on that information, which means that that information is just coming in, but you're not really absorbing it, much less implementing it. If you would, not you, but like in general, as an advice, if people would consume half the amount of information and dedicate the other half to just having that empty space in your mind for the dots to connect, for the insights to happen, for the reflection to happen, they will get much more of the other half of the information that they consumed. Right. So we need empty space in our life to be able to do good cognitive work. If you spend the whole day in the gym, just, you know, pushing weights, there's a point where your muscles are failing and there's nothing else you can do. You need to rest. And until you rest, you're not going to be able to continue. And it's the same thing with our mind. We are not so kind, you know, with our mind. We just expect it to be doing cognitive work one after another. And then we get to that point in the day where we still want to get more out of the day. We still want to tick more boxes, but it's hard to focus. We are getting distracted. And so we just do meaningless work. We do work that doesn't move the needle. It would be better that instead we stop and take a rest. Go to your animal sanctuary if you're lucky to have one. Uh, Listen to music, do some exercise, spend time with your family, do something non-cognitive. Because it's in those moments where you're doing something non-cognitive that your attention is being replenished, that your willpower is being replenished. And then sleep, mate. Sleep is extremely important. If you're not getting enough sleep, you think you are, you think you're being more productive by working an extra hour instead of sleeping, but you know that may happen 1-2 days in a row, and that's it. After that, you need to catch up, otherwise you're fooling yourself.
Yes, it's so important. You're just robbing from your future self, right? It's so counterintuitive, but yeah, so many people have this rationale that they can beat themselves up and not take care of themselves and overextend themselves and not replenish the batteries and expect that they're going to be at peak performance. And that just doesn't happen. It's really interesting to think this. I feel it's very much a scarcity-based mentality. Do you agree, Giovanni, with why people do this?
Well, I was there once, you know, when I started my business. I was there. I was, whenever, if I'm alive, if I if I'm breathing, I am consuming information or I am doing cognitive work. That was my state. And I realized that that led to me wasting a lot of time, trying a lot of things that if I had thought properly, if I had, you know, studied and reflected more, that was a waste of time. I couldn't see it. When you don't create space for yourself to really reflect, it seems that everything is important. It
Mm.
seems that any shiny object is worth pursuing. So yeah, I think I agree with you. It's just an expression of a scarcity mindset that you feel that every piece of information is important, that every marketing strategy out there is worth trying, that every investment strategy out there is good and you need to investigate. And like this, you just spread yourself too thin. And when the real opportunities come, you're not ready.
Yes, you bang on, mate. And I think this, once again, this is so basic, but it's the fundamentals that drive the biggest change, the biggest impact, the biggest transformations in life, business, and wealth. And this is the reason why this conversation is so important for people, and particularly at this time of year. I think this is probably going to air in January, where people are getting ready for the year. They've potentially even broken their New Year's resolutions already by the time they listen to this episode. And this is a prime example just to work out, well, if you're constantly failing at the superficial level, you need to drop down into the unspoken and start improving the operating system if you want to get better outputs that end up manifesting themselves in the world. So I think this is a really powerful conversation, mate. So if somebody's listened or watched this and they're interested in learning more about what you do, how would you describe an ideal client for you, mate?
Ideal clients for me, people who come to me and get the best results, they have got to a point in their life that they're not looking for shortcuts anymore. They know that they have to do the work. They know that self-discipline is what is missing. And they know that they need training. They are ready to commit. Commitment might be a problem, like they try to commit to their goals and they can't, but they are committed to that change. They want to make a change. Then they are ready. And no, they know that this is going to be a process. We work together for 3 months. It's a 3-month intensive because there's going to be ups and downs. And it's good that we're still working together when there is a down, so you can learn the mindset for recovering, for getting back on track. So you know, I work with people who, if I'm thinking about the trends, um, business owners, ambitious professionals, and investors, they tend to be the people who come.
Beautiful. Yeah, and that represents the vast majority of our clients. I'm sure there's plenty of people that could get help from you, mate. So if somebody's listened or watched this and they're interested in finding out more of how they could potentially work with you, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Well, they can visit any of my two websites, the liveinthare.com or the newest one, mindfulselfdiscipline.com. And they can come for a discovery call. Or if they like to learn more before, coming to discovery call, they can get my book, Mindful Self-Discipline. I also launched this year a YouTube channel where every day there's a 1-minute YouTube video covering these topics, right? So if you just search for my name on YouTube, Giovanni Dienstmann, it's going to be tough for you to type that surname. So hopefully there's going to be a link in the show
We'll
notes.
include it in the show notes.
Absolutely. So that you can get to know me better, how I think, and we go from there.
Beautiful, mate. This has been fantastic. And guys, this is the real work that we need to be doing. If you're frustrated, you're not getting the outcomes that you want in your life, your business, your wealth, we need to upgrade our mindset, our discipline, and our follow through. And this is the best place to start with these simple tools. And remember, a good idea in theory remains exactly that, just a good idea until you put it into practice. So make sure you take action and reach out to Giovanni if you'd like to continue the conversation. Mate, I appreciate you making the time and looking forward to catching up again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jackson.